Alright, so we are back for another video, guys, and today we're gonna check out another CCA, and this is the CA16 Pro. So this is another hybrid configuration, and much like the ZAS that I have reviewed previously, this is another 7BA1 dynamic driver configuration, and of course from CCA. So we're gonna try to figure out how this compares to the ZAS, and also how does this differ compared to the previous CA16 as well. So of course, you're getting your typical box here, usual, KZ box. So the ZAS for me compared to the CA16, the base is a bit tighter for me in the overall presentation. And the CA16 has a bit more boom in the base, so different configurations there. Of course, opening it up, there you go, and that is the CA16. Actually, it's a bit different compared to the CA16 before. It has maybe some silver trims at the side. So looking at the cable, you're getting that maybe some $20 cable that you're usually getting with other KZs. So the ZAS has better cables for me compared to this one. This is your usual, maybe cheaper KZ cable. So looking at the lobes itself, so you're getting that silver trims at the side. You're getting that CCA logo. And in terms of the overall shape, this is very similar compared to the ZAS. So they might be, aiming for a same fit here. So maybe this is your brother of the ZAS, but it has still a different look at the side. You're getting that CCA, some ridges as well in the design. So it does look good for me, but I still like the ZAS look over this one. This is a bit more understated design for me, and it's also in the bigger side of things. So definitely bigger compared to the CKX. So the CKX before is quite surprising that you're getting that many drivers in a small package. So this is how it works on the ear, and it's very similar to the ZAS here, if not the same fit. So quite snug in the overall fit, but not the biggest fins that I've seen, so it's still quite comfortable to wear. Isolation is okay, but still not the best isolation because it doesn't go actually inside the ear that much compared to maybe your maybe CSN Pro X's. Those will go to the ear more compared to this one, so the isolation there will be better. But I do like the fit here overall, so it's not that suffocating to wear on the ear. So it's still quite snug. This is still not the most open kind of feeling on the ear, but for IEMs with fins, this is the better fitting IEMs now for me. So let's try to listen to some tunes and also do some measurements on the CA16 Pro. So I did some measurements on the CA16 Pros, and it's actually quite surprising for me. Maybe the tuning here reminds me a lot of the CSNs. So this may be the closest thing that I can think of. It has that 2.5K elevation, has that 6K elevation, and you're getting that 12K elevation as well. So yeah, you're still getting that 12K, 5K clarity on top. So let's try to listen to some tunes, and we are going to use the Cavalli Tube Hybrid with the Grace S-DAC for our listen today. So first impressions here, so much like the ZAS, this still has ample bass in the mix, and maybe a bit more mid bass for me in the mix. So in terms of the overall presentation, this definitely musical for me in the mix. So much like your other KZs, CCAs. So this is quite lively for me in the overall presentation. So it's a monitor type of presentation, but this is a bit more fun compared to other monitors because of that more boom in the bass here. So yeah, for me, the fun is still definitely there. So for those who like a more musical sound, more lively sound, this will fall right down your alley. So going to the bass region, so again, you're getting a bit more mid bass for me here. Compared to what you're getting with the ZAS in terms of the elevation for me in the mix. So we're getting still really big bass for me at the bottom. So the mid bass is a bit more prominent compared to the ZAS. So this is your fun bass. Maybe I can consider calling it maybe more of a blonde-ish kind of bass for me as well because of that more boom in the bass here. And it's really big for me in the mix. It has some mid bass bleed as well. So even if it measures maybe flat in the bass, it's still quite prominent bit bass for me in the mix. But compared to maybe the likes of the CKXs, the CKXs will have a bit more toned down bass. The bass here is a bit more fun to listen to. So the CKX is more of a monitor type of presentation for me on the ear. Here in the CA16 Pros, it's more fun in the presentation. So yeah, the bass here maybe reminds me a lot of blonde type of bass here. So going to the mids is still, yes, recessed in the mix here, but very close to where I want it to be. So definitely the vocal positioning for me is better compared to the ZAS here. So the vocal positioning is nearly where I want it to be. The presentation as well is more in the clean side of presentation. It's not the thickest presentation of the vocals here. It's more in the clean side of presentation. It's not the biggest presentation as well. So definitely here in the CA16 Pros, still the bass for me is front and center in the mix. This has a bit of mid bass bleed, so sometimes it can drown the vocal part of the spectrum. But the vocal presentation for me is quite clear for me in the mix. so it will push through the mix nicely. But yeah, that mid-bass bleed sometimes can be a bit annoying for me sometimes. But I like that it has a lot of micro detail for me in the mix. And actually, compared to maybe other BAs, this has a bit more smoothness for me in the overall sound. Maybe because of that multi-driver system in the mids here. So this is not as clean as maybe your 10T3s of the world. Yeah, the vocal positioning for female vocals is better for me compared to the male vocal. This is where you want it to be, and I like that you have some micro detail in the vocals as well. So that multi-driver system helps out in that micro detail presentation. I'm encountering maybe a touch of hotness as well in the vocals here, so it's quite revealing for me in the overall presentation. So maybe that 2.5 hump, that 6K hump made the presentation bright and revealing for me in the mix. Actually, maybe the tuning here reminds me as well of the Blonde Prometheus. We're gonna try to check out the measurements later, but in the Blonde Prometheus as well, you're still getting that double horns at the top and ample bass at the bottom. But yeah, maybe one downside for me is the tonality in the vocals. So it still has that maybe metally tonality that you're getting with other BAs. So you're getting a bit more micro detail, but not that nice in tonality. So let's try to listen to some Joe Satriani jumping in. Going to the top end for guitar tracks, again, usually for CCAs, KZs, it's nicely revealing in the mix for me in terms of the guitars. You're getting that 12K, you're getting that 6K. It helps out to bring some air frequencies to the guitars. It's very lively for me to listen to. But here, compared to the ZAS, the mid bass is a bit more elevated for me in the mix. That it gives a bit more fun for me in the overall presentation. So in terms of the top end, a lot of air frequencies here. So if you have some tracks that can utilize some air frequencies, you will feel right at home with this. But maybe one issue for me here is the cymbals, still a bit maybe too tinny for my liking, and the body as well, not that good for me. That's a bit of thinness for me in the body here. And I'm also encountering a bit of sibilance for me in the overall presentation as well. People who are sensitive to fatigue, you might have an issue with this in listening to this for a long listening session. Let's try some September, Earth, Wind, and Fire. Going to the sound stage, medium stage for me, not that big. Separation as well, medium. So it has a bit of boom for me in the bass, and the bass is really big in the mix, so it makes the separation a bit less for me in the mix here. Alright, next let's go to measurements and comparisons as well. So comparing this to the ZAS, as you guys can see, you're getting a lot more 12K for me in the mix, and also a lot more sub bass for me in the mix as well. So definitely the ZAS is more V-shaped compared to what you're getting with the CA16 Pro. So the ZAS will be a bit more fun, more musical to listen to on the ear. So again, if you're into fun musicality, maybe the KZ is gonna be a bit better in the overall presentation for you. So between this two, which one do I like more? So for me personally, if I just need to choose one, it might still be the ZAS. So for me, I like that the ZAS is a little bit more fun to listen to, a little bit more lively to listen to. So yes, for me, ZAS over the CA16 Pros. Going to the Blonde Prometheus, as you guys can see, they have some similarities in some parts of the spectrum, but still, different tuning here. So in the bass region for the Blonde Prometheus, you're getting a bit more prominent hump. So the bass in the Blondes is still gonna be a bit more compared to what you're getting with the Prometheus. But as you guys can see, both of them have that maybe mids hump around 2K to 2.5K. And also in the 7K as well, they have some similarities in the hump as well. And also they do have maybe 12K to 15K peak as well on top. So they have some similarities in the trends, but your Blondes will still have a bit more prominent bass for me at the bottom. Next, comparing this to the CCA CSNs. So as you guys can see, a lot of similarities in the graph as well. So if not, your CSNs will have a bit more maybe bass in the mix. But on top, a lot of similarities here. You're getting that 2.5K elevation, 5K elevation as well, and also 10K elevation on top. So very CCA kind of sound here with the CA16 Pro. So comparing this to one of my favorite hybrids, the CCA CKXs. So as you guys can see, the CKX is still a bit more V-shaped compared to what you're getting with the CA16 Pros. On top as well, you're getting a bit more clarity for me on top, maybe around 5 dB, more elevated treble on top. So that's why for me, the CKX will still be more monitor, type of listen for me on the ear because of that treble extension on top. So for guitar tracks, you're gonna have more clarity for me in the CKXs. And as you guys can see in the bass region as well, it's a bit more recessed compared to the treble region. So yeah, different tunings here, but still you have some similarities in the graph. Both of them have that 5K, 6K extension. Both of them have that 12K extension as well. So still, again, very CCA, kind of sound for me on the ear. All right, so let us try to close this thing. So for the CCA CA16 Pro, so what are my thoughts on this? Do I like it or not? So first, much like the ZAS, if you're into bass, if you're into a boomy kind of bass, maybe a blonde style of bass with more mid bass, and if you're looking for a hybrid configuration, this might be something that you can consider. So the vocal positioning for me is nice in the CA16 Pro. And the top end as well, you're getting ample air frequencies on top here. So it's kind of like a blonde-ish kind of sound mixed with a CCA. That is the vibe that I'm getting here. So again, for bass heads, you would like the listen here in the CA16 Pro. So for my personal preference, do I like the CA16s or not? So for me, much like the ZAS, so I didn't particularly like this that much. This is not a top 5 contender for me in the channel. So I find the mid bass to be a bit too elevated for me in the mix, that it can muddle some parts of the spectrum, especially the vocals. So while the vocal positioning for me is nicer here compared to what you're getting with the ZAS, so the mid bass is a bit too much for me. The bleed is a bit too much for me in the mix here. And also on top as well, I'm encountering some hotness in the overall presentation as well. So even if again the vocal positioning here is a bit better compared to the ZAS, that top end, that fatigue when listening to this for a long listening session is not that nice for me. So again, for me, if you're looking for a hybrid configuration, I still do like the CKXs. That is maybe still my favorite CCA in that price range for me. So yeah, for this price range for me, I didn't like it that much. All right, so that's my take with the CA16 Pros. Again, quite late for me on this, much like the ZAS. So yeah, this round for me, the ZAS CA16 Pro, not so much for me in the overall presentation. So hopefully we can see improvements in the tuning from me in the KZ CCA range for 2022. Hopefully they up their game in that price range, because yeah, it's getting a lot more competitive in the $70 range. There's a lot of competitors there. Hybrids, 2-driver hybrids, actually really nice as well. Single dynamic drivers, really nice. And for CCA and KZ offerings, they are still offering similarities to maybe 2 years ago of IEMs. So they need to update their presentation on the ear. So hopefully that can compete with the top 5s for 2022. All right, so that's my take with the CA16 Pro. Of course, if you learned something, leave a like and subscribe more content like this in the future. What do you think of the CA16 Pro? Do you have it, not have it? So I'm a bit late on this, so I'm not sure if you guys already have it. If it's one of your favorites as well, let me know down in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'm gonna see you guys in the next sequel video. Bye.